Hey guys, it's September 1st, Tuesday, 2020. This will be my second video of today. On this video I wanted to just do a quick rundown of doing a 787 or 800, which I'm going to call it 800 Sea-Doo 800 swapping in a 951 into an X4 hull. X4 hull would be a 95 or 96 XP and a 97 to 99 SPX. Now, specifically, this is the ones with the 787-800 engines. There's two 95 XPs that were released. One's the white and yellow with the 720 engine or the 717 engine. That engine is different. It uses a cradle mount. And then there's the other 95, which is this one, which has the single gauge hood and the pink bottom, the famous pink bottom. Half the bottom is pink. So this was the 95 XP 800 Limited, and it had the in 95 it had the 800 engine in it. The other one had the 720 engine in it. So this video is going to cover the swapping in a 951 engine where a 800 engine originally was. The first thing you're going to need is a modified stator cover engine mount to use the stock 787 engine mount, which will need to be rotated 180 degrees. So basically, on the 800s, the mount that's fiberglass into the hull is on the left side of the hull. The 951s have the mount on the right side. So your choices are either fiberglass in, do some fiberglass work, and fiberglass in another engine mount, or use this modified stator cover, which will be modified and have a bracket off that will use the stock mount, so you don't have to do any fiberglass work. But that mount that's in there will have to be rotated 180 degrees. These modified covers can be purchased from Paul Bretz on the Sea-Doo Two-Stroke Owners Group Facebook page. That's Paul Bretz. You can send him your cover and he'll modify it for you and send it back. He charges a little extra if you don't send him one and you just need one. I'm not going to quote any prices on here because I don't know how his prices may change. But anyway, he also does something else for the Rave valves, which I will get to in a different step in a few minutes. But order those from him to get that modified stator cover to use that stock 800 mount. The next thing you will need will be a modified water box. Now, the 800s, the pipe come around back and go into the water box and feed in here. The 951s come the other way. So you'll need this rubber boot, this elbow, and this rubber boot, and a modified water box. So where it comes out the side here, the top side. You can get this modified water box, send your stock 787-800 water box to Brock Austin in Havasu, Arizona, and he will modify them for you and send it back with these pieces you need. Just tell him what type of swap you're doing and what all you need. So that way you can keep your original exhaust outlet over here. Some people have modified it and put the water box on this side and then done the exhaust over and fiberglass this hole up and done another hole over here. Again, I didn't want to do fiberglass work, so this is the best option. So that's step 2 is the modified water box. Brock Austin is also on the Sea-Doo Two-Stroke Owners Group on Facebook. Next is the modified Rave valves. If you're not using the 951 engines electronics, those electronics have a solenoid that actuates and operates the Raves. If you're not using those electronics, then you'll need to just basically plug these holes, and you'll need to drill out the insides of the Rave housings, a small little hole. That way the Raves will operate using the pulse of the engine instead of the being operated by the solenoid. That's if you're not going to use the 951 electronics. You can send these housings off to Paul Bretz, the same guy that does the stator covers, and he will modify those for you. Again, I'm not mentioning prices. The next thing you will need to do, you don't have to do this, but it's highly recommended, is an Aftermarket External Rectifier from Dave Sebelius in North Dakota. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but his aftermarket rectifiers, they're external, right there. So basically, you'll need to unplug the red wire in the red box from the rectifier, and then the harness that comes out of the box that used to go into here, into the stator, you pull that out, you plug it into his harness, and then the other end of his harness you plug into there. So it just bypasses your stock rectifier. Dave is an awesome guy. He's helped me with this custom build, this custom project, because I'm using the 800 electronics. He sent me his unit to test, and then we found out that there's a ground wire, an additional ground wire in the 800s that the 951s don't have. So I didn't have that ground wire in his little pin, in his harness. It was just he sent me a 4-inch wire with the right pins, and I just plugged it into the harness. Very easy to do. He did all this for me. He sent me his product. After we had the issue, realized he researched it and found out what it was. He was missing a wire for the 800. He sent me that wire. He did all this work before I even paid him a dime. And he said, if we can't get to work, I can send it back to him, and I'd only be out the shipping. We'd both only be out the shipping. But it worked. It was awesome, and he's very, very helpful. He knows his stuff. That's Dave Sebelius. He's lurking in the Facebook groups, the Sea-Doo Facebook groups. He owns his own power sports shop out there in, I think, Leeds, North Dakota. He knows his stuff. He's an older guy. He's been doing this for years. Great guy to talk with. Very helpful. I can't recommend him enough. Next is going to be your trimming, cutting, and sanding down of this lip that's under the seat. Use a Dremel tool with a drum sander or an orbital sander, and you're going to trim quite a bit of this away to get this pipe to fit. Looking at it here, you probably can't even really tell it's been modified, but it's been cut quite a bit. And because the pipe sticks up right here, your seat is going to have to be modified. I hit it with a torch right here, and then I put the seat on, press it on real tight, and let it mold to the pipe. Very simple to do. So just heat that up and let it mold to the pipe. Or you can cut it out and do some other modifications if you want. You can cut that section out of the seat. Next, you'll need to trim, sand down the pipe and the side of the hole where the pipe hits. Basically, back in there, in this groove here where it goes inside, it's deeper. You're going to need to sand down that area of the pipe and the hull with an orbital sander. Don't go too deep on either one. The pipe, you'll break through the pipe and you'll have to re-weld the pipe, which isn't a big deal if you have an aluminum welder or know someone that can weld aluminum. If you go through the fiberglass, well, you're going to be doing some fiberglass work. And as I've stated before, I try to avoid fiberglass work. Next, you'll need to cut out styrofoam on both sides of the engine. That's back in here, underneath here. You need to cut out and trim some of that styrofoam for that pipe. And I'm using the stock Airbox. If you're not using the stock Airbox, you really shouldn't have to cut any of the styrofoam out below there. But I had to with the stock Airbox. If you're going with aftermarket flame arresters, you shouldn't have to do that. If you're using the stock Airbox and this water box, it sucks because in order to remove the water box or the Airbox, I have to remove the water box, which It isn't hard. Just undo this hose clamps, undo the hose clamp back there, unhook the wires or these lines, unhook the bungee cord, and pull the water box out. Basically 5 minutes or so I can have the water box out, and then I can get the air box out. But if you're going with aftermarket flame arresters, intake arresters, you're going to need rejet. And again, as I've said before, I wanted to try to keep as much stock as possible and not have to rejet. Now I'm using a white pipe here. I had a black pipe in before. This is a white pipe manifold. I painted it silver, so it is the right manifold. This is the original manifold that was for a black pipe. The difference between the white pipe and the black pipe is, on the manifold, is this hole here. For the white pipe is larger. So I had a black pipe in there before, and I was having some issues with this hitting over here and my bolts backing out. So I switched to a white pipe since and I sanded all that down. So hopefully that solves that issue. So next we're going to have to discuss moving back the rear battery box. The rear battery box, right here, excuse my bad lighting, is really close to this pipe here. I had to move it back 2 inches even to fit it this close. I went to the hardware store, got some aluminum strips that are about 1 inch wide, and it was like 6 or 8 feet long, and I cut it into 10 inches, and I used the holes in the bottom of the box as a template, and I made some clearance holes for the bolts to go through to mount those brackets to those stock threaded holes in the hole, and then I also used the template to thread some holes so I could mount the box to the brackets. So that didn't take very long, very easy to do. I just need a drill and a tap and something to cut the aluminum straps with. Make sure you have the proper magneto and stator for whichever electronics you're running. There's one that's a single pickup and one that's a dual pickup, and I forget which one's which. The guy who built my engine made sure that I had the right stator and magneto. Basically, it's an 800 951 magneto, but the pickup is the right pickup for using the 800 electronics. So do some research on that, depending on which electronics you're running. Make sure you have the correct PTO for the drive shaft. This engine originally came out of a 98 XPL. The engine on the 98 XPL sit up front, so it uses a different PTO with a coupler with a different drive shaft. So I had to get a different PTO from I think this one's from a 98 GSXL. Basically just one that uses the splines and whatnot. This drive shaft is also from a 98 GSXL. Part number is 74107B-08. And I went with this route because this one has the groove for the O-ring or the C-clip for the carbon seal. I prefer using the carbon seal. And this way, because you have the groove, I can use the carbon seal, or I can swap back and forth. I can throw on a carrier bearing. If I didn't have this groove, I could only use the carrier bearing. So I have more options with this. So with this one, because I'm using the 95, which has the extended, the pump spacer back here, I could have used the stock 95 drive shaft, but that uses the carrier bearing, so I wouldn't have had this groove. So that's why I went with this one. It depends on what setup you're going with. If you don't have that back there, if you have a 96 XP, you should still be able to use the 96 XP drive shaft. So that's what we got there. The 787 uses all 1/4 inch lines, the gas lines. The 951 uses 5/16 for the feed lines. And so you'll need some 5/16 to 1/4 inch reducers. Now, I went and got the larger fuel separator back there that has the 5/16 line. So I swapped out that, and I went with a 99 SPX fuel baffle, which has the two larger reserve and feed line, and then the 2 1/4-inch other lines. Otherwise, you're gonna have to need quite a few reducers. Here for my oil primer or my gas primer, I have a reducer right in there. And again, there's that rectifier. I've got a mount, and I'm going to JB weld in there to secure better. Right now, I just kind of zip tied up in there. So that's your issue you're going to have with the 951 is the difference in the gas lines. Not a huge issue, but go ahead and plan ahead and get those 1/4-inch to 5/16 reducers. I recommend brass. I've got plastic ones in there. I already had one broke. Luckily, I was able to throw another plastic one in there, but I am going to be swapping them out with brass ones. So you'll need a few of those no matter which way you go with, because of the fuel separator and everything else, and your selector switch, because you might be able to use a 951 selector switch, but I'm still using the stock 800, which has the 1/4-inch fittings instead of the 5/16. Next is the throttle cable and the choke cable. Now I swapped out the choke for a primer. I still have to tidy up some of these lines and whatnot, but so I'm not running a choke cable. But if you want to run a choke cable, you'll need a choke cable and a throttle cable from the same 98 GSXL. Your 800, your stock 787-800 XP throttle cable is going to be a little short. It might reach, but the problem I had with that was I didn't have even where it was all the way maxed out as long as it could be, and it was still pulling the throttle open, so it wanted to rev. So that was the issue I was having with that. And I recommend running a primer setup. Next, like we said before, the 951 uses a solenoid, which is also powered by your electricity, your MPEM, and it's also powered by your pulse engine, your pulse from the engine. But since we're not using that solenoid, we're going to use the pulse directly from the cylinders to fire them. We need to, before you put the engine in, you're going to have 2 lines down there, 2 fittings down there. One is for the pulse for your carbs, to run your carbs. So you want to run that line, have that line down there because it's buried underneath the intake there, hard to get at. So put those lines on and run a hose from the second one and plug it. I put a bolt in it and I siliconed it up. So this would originally go to the solenoid that runs these, but since we're not using the solenoid, we need to plug it. If you don't do this and you keep an eye on this, because otherwise if this leaks, then your engine will run lean and you'll have engine issues. You'll blow seize your engine. So just run a line up and zip tie it somewhere and plug it. Otherwise, maybe you can weld that fitting shut. Just cap it off some way. But I like this way. This way I can be sure that it's plugged and keep an eye on it. So that's what we have. That's the main gist of doing this swap. It's not super hard, but it's tedious. I kept running into small little issues here and there because it's all custom, and I can't recommend you need to take your time on it. Take your time, do it right, don't rush it. I rushed a few things and had some issues. So just take your time. You're going to have a lot of money invested into some of these parts and this time and gathering up what you need. So do it right, take your time, and hopefully you'll have a good machine when it's all done. I'm very excited to have this all finished up and running. As you see, I've got a custom mount here for a bilge pump that just, it uses the bolt. It mounts the bolt for the cover, for the PTO cover, which I have off right now because I don't have my drive shaft in. But yeah, that way I have a nice bilge pump and it's wired up, and I have a switch here. My next thing on this is replacing, since I'm getting a manual trim, hydraulic trim with a finger lever, I won't be needing the digital gauge for the trim. I'll be putting a GPS speedometer gauge in there. But yeah, I'm waiting for that manual trim from Westside Power Sports. And then I'll be getting rid of the VTS buttons here and be getting a single button housing. And then that lever trim will go here. Anyway, like I said, I wanted to keep this more on swaps. I have this write-up, kind of a brief information on the people you need to talk to and contact to get these parts. This will be in the description as well. And some of the stuff I mentioned in here, there may be more additional stuff that I'll put in the comments later as more information comes available. So it may not be in this video. But hit me up on the Sea-Doo two-stroke owners group on Facebook and my Facebook group called Sea-Doo XP Riders. That's a group dedicated to the XPs and the X4 hulls. The Sea-Doo two-stroke group is dedicated to all Sea-Doo two-stroke skis. But my group is dedicated, my Sea-Doo XP Riders is dedicated basically to the XPs and the X4s. That's these style hulls. And these machines, these models. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. I hope it's very informative for doing this swap. Oh, there's one other tool I didn't mention. There's a nut that's buried back in there. It's the famous 951 nut that's on that stud. It's on this stud right here. And very, very hard to get at. There's a guy on eBay that makes a special wrench to get to it. Otherwise, you can go and buy yourself a 15mm wrench and heat it up and bend it like this. You'll need to grind quite a bit, as you can see, because there's very, very little room between the head of the pipe and where that nut is. So that's a 15mm wrench, and heat it up and bend it. Otherwise, there's a guy on eBay that sells his nice one for, I think it's like 20 bucks. I also have that one. I don't have it with me. I lent it to a friend because even that one, you need to grind more right here where it gets in, and it goes in like this, so you can get on that nut just like that. And you can also get at it from this side and tighten it. And make sure that sucker's good and tight. Along with these bolts, I have Loctite on these three. So yeah, so get this wrench. That's one thing you definitely want to own if you have a 951. So yeah, I'll make sure I add that in the description as well. If there's any other questions, hit me up, guys. Thanks for following my page. And ride safe and brap on. Keep brapping. Hit those waves. And keep on doing it. Peace out, guys.